In Templeton, California, in the Central Coast, the beautiful Central Coast. And you're down in Oceanside, California. And we've both been traveling, so we didn't get a chance to record a podcast the last couple of weeks. And here it is, the end of February already. So I'm glad we've had this chance to reconnect.
Yes, me too.
And since you and I met last, you've started to facilitate a accountability practice meeting on Saturday mornings.
Yep. Yeah, last Saturday was the inaugural meeting. So it's going to be every Saturday morning, 8:30, for as long as it lasts.
Does it have a specific duration each week?
Oh, it's an hour and a half.
Okay.
I made it Saturday morning because it's a time where somebody on the East Coast or even Europe can be timely for them to run their day. So
yeah, I mentioned to you, I was talking to my cousin today my nephew who lives in Chicago, so he's 2 hours ahead of us. So he might find it that more congenial than some of our evening meetings that we host out of Sacramento.
Yeah, very much so.
So
you know what we got to do is get some people willing to learn this from the East Coast, and then they can have their own meetings.
Let's set an intention.
Okay. Got it.
Because
so,
I think I told you this, but I'm currently writing a book where I'm taking everything that I learned from you and I'm integrating it with everything I learned from the integral philosopher Ken Wilber. And my nephew, who lives in Chicago, has been my editor. And so he just finished reading the first 8 chapters, and there's 2 more chapters to go. I just completed the 9th, so I'm unwrapping this book up. And he was very, very excited about what he was learning and what I was writing. And I have chapter titles like Nothing's Wrong and We're Always Getting What We Want and so forth. So I'm using what I learned from accountability and then putting it in Ken Wilber's integral model to show how what we learn in the accountability practice helps us get in touch with this depth of human evolution, the evolution of consciousness that we are all not only participating in, but we're creating it every moment. In every waking moment, every human being is contributing to the future by what we create, either consciously or subconsciously. And part of what I'm sharing with people is there's a conscious intentionality that can be brought to service in this work. There's nothing wrong, so it doesn't have to be, but there's value, not just to the individual who learns how to create his or her life intentionally, but as we've discussed on this podcast many times before, there's a value to all of us when any one of us does breakthrough or has a move ahead aha moment, when every one of us does healing of childhood trauma. And so he had this very great question, and this was the tantalizer. He said, I've read all this stuff. I read about the accountability practice. So now what? He said, can I do this on my own? And I said, well, technically you can, but I wouldn't recommend it. I'd recommend that you find a group of people who are doing this. He said, well, how do I do that? So I shared with him the different meetings that we've set up through your inspiration that we do in Sacramento, and now you've started one. And your comment about we sure be nice to find people on the East Coast and any time zone, frankly, to take this up, particularly once we can get back together in a room, then having meetings in all the different places around the country and around the world will make a difference. But what he got was, and what I want, the reason I'm saying all this is that this work is practical, it's embodied. You can't think, I can't think my way to healing. I can only feel my way to healing. And that's we talked about his struggles with that. He's 35 and what he's learned in his life in terms of how to deal with his own stuff. So one of the things I wanted to discuss today is that point. We've talked about this many times, but I don't think we can ever talk about it enough, which is the power of the emotional body in this work that we do. Even Ken Wilber doesn't really talk about that. And he understands, for example, the necessity of shadow work, but he actually thinks you can do shadow work on your own, which I like, maybe, but I would prefer not to even attempt it on my own.
Correct. And it's like my sense is the feeling work, the emotional feeling work embodies the information. I've been to workshop after workshop and had moments of epiphanies and left workshops just soaring. And then after a period of time, I found myself back in my doubt and insecurity. The accountability process, I explain it. I talk about it when somebody comes to my group. I talk about the logistics of how your decisions are made. And then once I get in the dialogue, I invite somebody to experience the accountability process. When they experience the accountability process, there's something internal that happens that generally, usually, neither one of us can talk about, except notice in each other or notice in self. Being a human being, planet Earth, we're carbon-based life forms, biochemically, electromagnetically motivated through emotional impulse. So when I say I am a gentle, loving, empowering whole man, I'm John, I'm a human being, it's all one thing: mental, emotional, spiritual. And we have been trained to take those apart and then talk about each one separately. Well, they're not separate. They're one thing. The power of being traumatized, a young child being traumatized, is that trauma is with them for the rest of their lives. If there's no relief or therapy or some way to relieve that stuckness, and to change a trauma frequency or information that the trauma's been that we glean from the trauma, which is watch out for this, whatever this may be, and it could be an offhanded comment. Our body responds to the frequency that emotion is holding, and then we tell ourselves, well, just let it go. Well, just quit doing that. What's wrong with you? Because we don't understand. I don't say we. I didn't understand that information that came in the form of trauma has been enlisted for my survival. It has been put in place so that I continue to survive, even though the situation is gone. In fact, it's so powerful because I did survive it. This creative part of ourselves actually recreates the chaos, drama that we survived to ensure that we survive. Now, to any rational person, that makes no sense whatsoever. The emotional body is not rational. It is not logical. It is charged with my welfare. And if it says this you survive, then that you will survive. I used to tell the guys in the jail that this part of you doesn't give a shit about you. It doesn't give a shit where you live your life, whether you're living life on the outside or doing 25 to life. It cares that you survive. That end result is not in its bailiwick. It doesn't like, it doesn't equivocate. It says, this is what's going to keep you safe and survive. So you recreate that, which is either addictive behavior or avoidant behavior, and find yourself in jail wondering, and even saying they've said to me multiple times, I knew what I was doing and I did it anyway. Well, let's talk about that. No sane person would do that. A traumatized person would do that and then try to make sense of it afterwards, rationalize it. I asked one gentleman, how many times you've been in jail? And this guy was 55 years old. He said 20 times. And I don't know what the durations were, but that's, let's say, half a year. That's 10 years out of his life. And it wasn't just 20 years in a row. It was multiple times where he spent time in jail. And he's left to explain that to the people around him, especially the people that love him. Like, what are you doing? Well, I'm going to blame society. I'm stupid. They're stupid. It's stacked against me. Everything's unfair. And we rationalize it. So I don't know.
If I could, because I'm in book writing mode. I think it's important to point out to people who are going to ask questions from their rational perspective, this mechanism that you're describing, this survival mechanism, is pre-rational. That's why it's not rational. Right. It came first in our development. Correct. We were born with it. We're not born with rational consciousness. The neocortex is still in development when we're born. Its development is not even complete for at least 12 months, if not 18 months.
Yes.
So this emotional survival mechanism is actually going to then instruct this neocortex as it evolves in how to support this survival. So that's why, this is my understanding, that's why it's not merely an emotional determination to survive, but my mind has been hired to then explain to me what's going on.
Right.
From the perspective of this survival mechanism, regardless of what's going on in the actual world around me.
Correct. And that ties into Wilber's spiral colors.
Right.
He says that when you spiral up in evolution or awareness or growth, you don't dismiss the bottom part. You don't dismiss where you've been. That gets incorporated into who you are. We as a society have dismissed the brainstem. We call it lizard brain, and we diminish it. And then we develop the midbrain or the emotional brain, and we call that the monkey mind. So we diminish that aspect of us that is an integral part of who we are, which if in alignment brings whatever it is we're looking for, and some people call that ascension, some people call it evolution, some people call it peace. Whatever it is we're looking for is incorporating the brainstem, midbrain aspect of us into our neocortex, which makes us evolved beings beyond the brainstem, beat my heart, do the chemical exchanges in my body, the midbrain, emotional, warm-blooded, and now human beings with this alignment that says, okay, what do you want? Knowing that you have this in here, this powerful force in here mechanism that is a creative force.
I heard somebody once say something to the effect of, all of evolution has conspired to give us all of these gifts that we have today.
Correct. Including our survival mechanism that is now layered with a neocortex.
Exactly.
that can direct, not demean, diminish, honor, respect that aspect of ourselves that has kept us sentient for how long you believe we've been on the planet. Some people believe millions, hundreds of thousands. However long you believe we've been here, this part of our brain kept us sentient so we could do this. It's time to do this. And not, one of the statements that I when I'm doing a group with men, and we start talking about, I'm an angry man, I can't control my anger. My statement is that anger is the least felt emotion by men on this planet. And then I pause, and everybody's looking around like, what the hell did this guy just say? And then I explained to him, anger is that emotional part, brainstem, midbrain, that offers us information about our environment on things that are unfair, not fair, just, not just, a harm about to happen, so that we can maneuver in that and stay safe. When they say, I'm an angry man, the picture in their mind, and the picture that comes into my mind, is them yelling at somebody, them demeaning somebody, them throwing stuff in the room. And they say, that's anger. Well, no, that's the behavior from resentment, bitterness, contempt, from not being connected to yourself. It's like, not being connected. I give my experience, me not being connected to myself and knowing who I am, where I am, and what I want, created me as, and I want to go as far as to say, a batterer, a violent, dangerous person to be around. And in my awareness, I had myself as a nice guy. So there was this disconnect from what they were telling me and what I was feeling in here, and that caused more resentment, bitterness, contempt. And I kept calling the violence I did to my children and my partner anger, and it was that it just kept spiraling until I've had enough. I'm out of here. I'm gone. I can't handle this. So.
Well, that goes back to what you were saying earlier, and what I want to focus on is why this is the good news.
Okay.
Because the body is always right. Let's start with the premise that whatever I'm feeling is exquisitely appropriate, and there's no such thing as a wrong feeling. There's no such thing as a wrong emotional state. There just is the emotional state. And as you said, this is always producing information. Now, the emotional state is not designed to interpret that information. It's just designed to feel and generate these states. So now we have to engage this, particularly when those emotional states are not the ones that make us comfortable and feel peaceful or whatever. They're the ones that are difficult to manage. And we have, unfortunately, our brain has been, our thinking mind has been enlisted by our defense mechanism to explain away or to make somebody else, like you were talking about the gentleman who was in for 20 years, make somebody else to blame. It's not me, it's her, it's whatever. And so what I've come to understand through the accountability process is that none of that system can change until I go to the core energy first.
Yes.
And for me, this is my experience, John. I remember sitting in an accountability meeting with you back when we were doing a men's meeting years ago now. And maybe it only took me 3 years to hear what you were saying. and to be able to own some very shameful behaviors that I was engaging in without being aware that these were behaviors that were from my childhood trauma. And they were just trying to protect me. I didn't get it. But when I owned, this had to do with, I was creating myself getting in debt, and I mean, head over heels in debt.
Yeah.
Indebtedness that even to my rational mind seemed to have no way out. And I remember sitting in our room where we were meeting and saying, you know, I guess I like being in debt. I'm going to own I like being in debt. And everything shifted because my mind finally told the truth that my body was presenting to me. And because my body couldn't explain it, it could just push it through the feeling nervous system of itself. So when I was able to, I mean, I can still, there's only a couple inflection points in my life where I owned a difficult truth, but I can tell you each time my life changed radically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's because I finally, and I think this is the work of grace. I finally had the grace to be willing to just tell a truth that felt like something I couldn't say out loud. The threat was, if I said this out loud, I'll be abandoned by my group. I'll be like I'll be like one of those supposed Eskimo foundlings put out on the floe of ice and left to die. That's why we have this. That's why this defense mechanism is so powerful, because it's trying to prevent that.
Yes.
And it's only doing that because that it feels that threatened, not because it knows. It just feels that threatened, so it's going to cut it off. I'm never going to feel this again.
Right.
So when I was finally able to have that experience and just, I mean, even now, this was, like I said, 10 years ago, I can still feel my body relaxing right now. I can still feel the joy of letting go. And at the time, I didn't understand that I was not just letting go, but I was in a group of people who were just holding me without condition. And being my cheerleaders without necessarily using pom-poms and, you know, jumping up and down, but the energy was there. And so those two things, the willingness to tell the truth about how I was feeling and the acceptance of that truth by the community that I was participating in, created a whole new emotional vibration.
Correct.
And in our accountability work, it's that new emotional vibration that follows immediately upon this aha moment that allows me to create something new by asking, okay, what do I want? Oh, I want peace. Okay. And then creating that as an intention. I intend to experience peace. Or in the case of what I was going through, I intend to be prosperous.
Yes.
And then let it go.
And let it go. That, see, when you named it, that gave you the choice to let it go.
Yep.
The name for me, it was cruel. Okay, I'm cruel. That lined up with my trauma. And it was like this trauma was trying to keep me safe, and I'd keep diminishing, say, oh, you dumbass, how come you're doing that? And as soon as I said I'm cruel, this went, yes, okay, you finally recognize my work here. And it's self-validating. It's counterintuitive. It's not, it doesn't make rational sense based on where we came from and how we developed our rational mind. To name that thing that is you are the most afraid of naming because of the abandonment, isolation, ostracification. And when you name it, this open happens. And it is my intent to be kind, actually fused with the trauma frequency, the kind fused with that, and then simply went back down with a new directive in that brainstem midbrain part of ourselves that had to develop to give us the possibility to evolve.
Yeah, and I just want to point out here to, again, the newcomer, that this is possible because, again, in this evolutionary wonder that the human body is, the brain is what's called plastic. That is to say, the brain can be rewired. The neural networks of the brain are always responding to external inputs. And so what we're now doing is we're creating a new input, a new directive, like you said, and the brain responds to this.
Yes.
So the reason why this is all possible is because our body and our brain is designed to permit change, to permit the healing through this process. So that, again, we're just the product of millions of years of evolution giving us this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, beyond just this, the opportunity is for us to be the consciousness of the universe, to be the eyes and ears and the feeling of the universe, because the universe is mostly rocks and energy. So we're a very sophisticated product of billions of years of evolution.
Yes.
By the universe.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the good news, like beyond the how do I get out of this crap I'm in?
Right. So, yeah. So the survival mechanism, I'm going to recap. So the survival mechanism, the brainstem and midbrain, is part of our evolutionary process. Brainstem first, midbrain, and then the neocortex. So we developed this neocortex, and then we were raised in a society who want to be good people, evolved people, civilized people. So we demean and diminish this thing, this emotional processor thing or emotionality in ourselves or anybody else because it's not rational for whatever reason, wherever that came from, doesn't matter. And so in the process, we demean, diminish ourselves, which impacts the trauma. And Gabriel Monte calls it complicated post-traumatic stress. And he's talking about childhood and or other trauma, mostly childhood trauma, that is impacted and then goes into overdrive to keep me safe. It's not gone, it's just packed in there. And we pack not only one in there, but then we pack on top and on top and on top until we have a myriad of traumas that are working together to keep us safe. And my myriad of trauma said, once you get close to a woman and she says, I love you, there's danger. That is not rational. And my body reacted as if that were the truth. And I had to figure out, rationalize why I did the things I did. And it's obvious to the casual observer that it's either me or her or them. Until one person pointed out to me, in all these relationships, what was the one consistent thing? And I thought real hard on that one. And he goes, well, John, you were. That's the consistent thing. So if they're all turning out the same and you're the only consistent thing in it, you might want to look.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So so let's continue the recap, John. So
yeah,
that's the explanation of what happened, and it's also the explanation of why it seems to recur. So why is it that why are you being triggered when a woman says I love you when the original frightening I love you happened 35, 40 years ago? So it's still there because our defense mechanism is still working because it hasn't been relieved of its duty.
The trauma hasn't been healed or processed.
Right.
If I were had this awareness and I was 2.5 years old, I'd have walked right into my parents' bedroom, said, hey, fuck you all. I'm going down to Danny's house and live with them because his parents treat him like a human being. You guys get your shit figured out. When you get it figured out, let me know. I may come back. And I'd have taken my diapered little ass right down the street to Danny's house.
Right.
I didn't have that wherewithal. As an adult, I'm fighting for that wherewithal. It was my longing to figure out this cunning, baffling, powerful disease that kept me in a pattern of behavior of separation and destruction. And in my longing for that answer, the end result of that is you and I are talking. I have a podcast, I do meetings, and I talk to a lot of people about this mechanism that had me imprisoned, had its claws on me, and I couldn't get away because I was always fighting it, which re-traumatized me and impacted me more. Instead of getting better, I was in a downward spiral.
So let's talk a little bit more about the other side of this, if you're open. And that is, okay, you've hinted at it a couple times even today about what the recreation is like. So once I have that aha moment, I'm cruel. You've also used the I'm a bad dad situation before. And we own that that's truth. I like being in debt. I'm also cruel. I have the whole cruelty thing going as well. Only I wasn't really cruel. So I had the great denial going on too. I'm a nice guy like you. And so once we own that and we say, instead, I want to feel peace. I want to be kind, whatever shows up in the process. Then what can I look forward to? What's
something different? and I wish I could be more.
Well, that's a good start.
Yeah, it simply changes the dynamics, internal dynamics. When I got one of my biggest epiphanies, which is the love equals, me realizing that based on my family of origin, my mother wanted a girl, my dad wanted a white baby. And they said, I love you. And yet that I love you had this quality of demeaning, diminishing, you're not enough. When I grew up and looked for partners, I would be attracted to the people that thought I needed to change. And I would feel the body chemistry of love, the attraction, the body chemistry, and think I was in love. And yet I was actually seeking this same frequency from my parents because that's what I had love mixed up with. And they would reject me after a while. And then I would blame them because in my mind, I was bending over backwards to please them, which meant a lot of lies, a lot of posturing, a lot of false pretenses on my part, which is, it's not endearing to be a people pleaser. And when they had enough and it was over, it was like I was at a loss. Okay, so what I decided to do in this process was try harder. I will please them more. And so it's just like, until I got to the point where the pain was too great and I was at a loss. The pain was greater than the fear of going someplace I didn't know where to go. And it's dark night of the soul, hitting bottom in the 12 step, we call it hitting bottom. Everything I saw that gave me value as a man, which is pleasing my partner, working hard, making money, the whole constellation of what it meant to be a man just fell apart. In fact, my partner, when I was explaining to her how valuable I am, I go to work every day, I do what you ask. Sometimes, if there's somebody else hasn't asked me to do something first. And she said to me, John, that's nothing. She not only said it once, she said it about, I want to count 10 times. And every time she said it, she increased the volume and intensity of that's nothing. And I was floored. I had no way out. I was done. And that's when I went to my first meeting.
So I like what you said a minute ago. What can I expect is something different. And I want to go into that a little bit more, because the something different, the specific something different, comes from the intention that I set. So I set an intention, for example, in the experience that I was talking about of mine, to be prosperous. And I understand that it may be true that I only need to say that once, but I had to say it more than once. So this is what I call an iterative process. I reiterate this intention every single time that old energy arises, because now I've got awareness. So when that energy of liking to feel impoverished, which is just a version of being shamed, whenever that energy arose, I could, if I remembered, and this is, again, it takes time to learn this process, I could say, oh, there it is again, I intend to be prosperous. So that rewiring process that I talked about a few minutes ago, it takes time. It took me many, many years to wire my brain to be in that other configuration, that protective against more trauma configuration. So it's not going to be changing overnight. But I suggest that the accountability work is an accelerant of change, because it occurs in this environment of unconditional love in the group. So when I was a kid, I didn't have unconditional love. That little baby who lived in a family where dad would come home one night and be all happy and jolly, and the next night be angry and violent. And so I just had to pull away from all of it. I wanted the happy and jolly guy, but gosh, the next night it might be a belt to the butt or something like that. So I had to pull away. I did not know, as I became an adult, as a teenager adult, I did not know that I had set that in motion. So I just kept reinforcing it in every single situation where there was a threat. So now I've got this breakthrough, I've got this aha, and I have this group. And I do 3 meetings, 4 meetings a week, even now, years later. And I do them now out of joy, and I look forward to them, because it's a place where I can not only do work for myself, but I can support anybody else who wants to do work for herself or himself. And so, so it's, sometimes people say, well, gosh, this is going to take forever. And I say, well, are you willing to consider you just have to do it one day at a time?
Yeah. What I usually say is, so what are you doing anyway? You got something to do?
Right.
I mean, what else you got planned? I mean,
exactly.
And when I said it the first time, something changed. It is automatic. When I change the frequency, I own the end result, and it stimulates the trauma frequency. It comes up into my awareness. I can feel that frequency, and I say it is my intent to be kind or loving or nurturing and caring. It fuses with that. I am different from that moment. And I have a myriad of trauma experiences from wherever my conception to whenever I first said I intend to be love equals acceptance, or I intend to be accepting. It shifted, and the reinforcement is I want more. I want more of this. Yeah, so that's where the heart came from around the accountability process, the accountability tree. So I have an arrow at the bottom, and somebody asked me one time, what's that arrow about? And I just drew on the board, do it again, and this heart came out on the board, and I thought, oh, that was clever.
Right.
And it's in alignment with coming from your heart space, and learning to come from my heart space is a process. It's been a process. soon as I got love equals rejection and I changed it to love equals acceptance, coming from my heart space began. It started, it opened the door. And as you do, I do, I don't know, 6, 8, 10, 12 meetings or sessions a week. And it doesn't get tiring. It doesn't not get tiring talking about this new place I find myself in and feeling myself in this, who I've become. I remember looking in the mirror a couple of years ago and actually had this, well, I actually like who I become. And it was like like one of those shock moments. It's like, wow, well, oh, wow, this is cool. And I want more.
Yeah.
And I get more when I give it away. If I give it to you, I give it to somebody else, I give it to other people, I'm doing it for myself. I'm gaining with your awareness. I tell people, especially in the drug and alcohol treatment field, that it is my intent to give you the information so that you live a rich, abundant, full, authentic life. And I do that for selfish reasons, because when you're living authentically, there is nothing of mine you want, and I am safe. My children are safe, and my grandson's safe, and I'm selfish, so I want more.
Well, it also feels good.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah, yes, it feels. Definition of happy is the feeling of alive. So based on that definition, happy is the word I choose. I feel alive, engaged, proactive, meaningful, that I mean something to somebody, that I'm needed by the people around me. And I think it was William Glasser who said the greatest human need is the need to be needed. And it may have been Maslow. I'm seeing Glasser right now. And I get that. And especially in a relationship, when you know you contribute to the other person's welfare and your combined welfare, that feeling of participation in a healthy way, it is what I'm looking for in my humanity and being of service. So
I set my intention to love equals, no, let me say it this way. I intend to create a world of joy, peace, freedom, and community. And so what I've discovered as I've been working with that and focusing on that over the last 2 or 3 years, that there's just a lot more joy, peace, freedom, and community in my life. And sometimes, like you, I wake up and go, oh my gosh, this is actually happening.
Yeah, it's yeah. I call it grace.
Yeah.
I've been graced with this information, graced with this experience, graced with my friends and my family, and this opportunity to impact my world in a, I want to say positive way, in a healthy way.
Yeah. So there's something else that I've heard you say in the past, and I don't know if it's relevant here, but let's explore it, because I think it's part of the way things shift. Is I've heard you say, and I think you've said it on this podcast before. I hope I'm not outing you. As I revel in my character defects.
Ah. Yeah, I revel in my character defects. It's like the character defects are the result of trauma. In recognizing the character defects and owning them, they become my character assets. And an example of that, before my recovery, I was master manipulator. I could cut somebody in a room full of people, and only that person would know that he or she got cut. Master manipulator.
Oh, I could do that too.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so character asset, master facilitator. Only now I ask your permission first, and it's none of my business. Before, I didn't care whether it was my business or not. Now it's if you give me permission, let's talk about what we want to talk about. And I use the same skill set that I developed in the character defect. So
Well, I find along similar lines, the character defect of hypervigilance that I developed to make sure that you didn't discover certain things about me.
Correct.
So that if I detected in the slightest that you were heading in that direction, I'm going to head you off.
Right.
I'm going to deflect. I'm going to change the subject. I'm going to leave the room, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Now, that same power allows me as a facilitator to stay present in the room with what's going on.
Mhm.
Not for the purpose of going anywhere with it, but just to notice it. And if an opportunity arises that somebody wants to learn something, they ask me, what do you see? And I say, okay, you're giving me permission. I'm going to tell you what I see.
Mhm.
So again,
Mhm.
it's the same thing. Now I don't use it to defend. I use it to create community.
And empower. It's the word I like to use for my use of this this skill set, is to empower myself and other people. Is to show them that they have this already.
Right.
The power is inside, and
It
yeah.
actually comes with the human package.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah.
We're
That's what
born
we
with it.
we're born with it. And it got covered up by years of trauma and dysfunction and accusations and humiliation and ridicule.
Right. And part of the reason I'm writing my book is to point out to people that A, this is an inescapable part of the deal, and B, it's just where we are developmentally. I mean, if you look at the history of life on this planet, life's been around for 3 billion years, and human consciousness has been around for, some people say, 50,000 years, and certainly the consciousness of individuation, I am my own self, that's roughly 500 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so what I want to say is that's the good news. It's like, we have minds that are so powerful that
Yeah.
we can use our minds to say what it should be.
Yeah.
Even though we also don't often use those minds to say, but it's not.
Right.
But I can create whole worlds. I mean, you think about famous writers like J.R.R. Tolkien, who created a whole world in Lord of the Rings, or J.K. Rowling, the whole world with Harry Potter. We're doing that every day. We're all doing that. We're just not writing it down and making millions of dollars.
Right.
But that capacity to imagine the next move, I can sit here and imagine what I'm going to do after I'm done with the podcast, and I can figure out. I mean, it's just natural.
Yes.
And so part of what we're doing here is we're harnessing that energy now in the service of this intention that we're creating.
Mm-hmm.
I intend to create a world of joy, peace, freedom, and community, and I let my imagination be part of that job. And whereas in the past, my imagination was keeping me in prison, was helping me keep in prison.
Yes. Yes. Because the imaginings were coming from the trauma and the misinformation, childhood misinformation. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's being let out of this prison does result in change, and there's no specificity to it because everyone gets to choose.
Yeah. And depending on how long you've been in that prison, you could get let out and then just go, nah, don't want this, and go banging on the door to get back in. It's like the Stockholm Syndrome, the Plato's illustration of shadows on a cave, shadow world, that's the real world. Don't turn around. So yeah.
Well, one of the things that this tells us, if we want to pull the camera back, is that, it's not easy to become an autonomous, authentic, individual human being. We're still pioneering this. This is hard work. And most of the world isn't even there yet. Most of the world still lives in tribal kinds of cultures where the individual is not honored, and each individual person's expected to play his or her role in supporting the group. So this is a pioneering effort, and what you have contributed to this is immense. And as we've talked about in other podcasts, it's only just begun.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's only just begun.
once we hit that critical breakout mass, I believe this process has the opportunity to change the world.
I
I
agree.
have no idea how that will happen, but I just know it's possible.
Right. Yeah, and we don't do the how. We just do. I don't do the how. I do what's right in front of me. I feel,
Exactly.
who am I? Where am I? What do I want?
Exactly.
And this ties in also with this concept you and I talk about every once in a while, is how do we do this on a community level?
Right.
And the information I've been getting is that as a race consciousness and human race, consciousness is its own identity evolving. So if I'm in this race consciousness evolution, and I want to use the term, we're maybe at the petulant 8-year-old state, race consciousness, or maybe preteen, maybe teenager, I don't know.
If
But
we're
we're in this developmental stage, and whatever is happening, I don't want to say needs to happen, is in alignment with this race consciousness evolution movement towards maturity as a race consciousness.
Yep.
So with this picture in my mind, I intensify my particular individual work, what I contribute to myself and the people around me. That is paramount to this whole thing that's developing race consciousness, this one identity as a whole. And it's exciting. It went from, oh my God, this will never happen, this is a futility, to, oh no, I'm gonna do, I have a part, I have a say in this, and I'm gonna do my part. And sometimes it's one-on-one talking to people, sometimes it's talking to groups, sometimes it's like owning some stuff with my daughter. It's and I'm excited to be alive at this time.
Well, that's part of what I heard you say a few minutes ago, and you said, it never gets tired.
Right.
When we're doing this work. Somebody asked me about that. I said, I'm always doing the work.
Yeah.
It's not, once I've learned the process, then it's become part of my daily life. It's part of my dream life at night, because it's where I want to be.
Yes.
I'm creating the life I want to create. And what we haven't talked a whole lot about, we have a few minutes remaining, we haven't talked a whole lot about the higher power, but all of this, at least from me, rests on the assumption that there's a benevolence to this evolutionary process. Some people call it God, I call it God, but there's a benevolence that has created this such that this emergence can happen through choice and not through compulsion. And for me, that's one of the reasons this is tough, is because we're not compelled to do it a certain way. We're allowed to experiment. We're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to double back. We're allowed to be in a hit bottom. All of these things contribute. I think your point you were making a minute ago makes perfect sense to me. All of these things contribute, and we're in the middle of it, so we can't see how. We're only blessed with hindsight, so we can see how it happened in the past. Well, I'm here to say what's happened in the past kind of, for me, demonstrates that what we're doing makes sense, even though I can't prove it in any kind of, quote, scientific, end quote, way. I don't need to, any more than Galileo needed to prove what he was doing was going to change the world, or Newton, or Jesus, or Muhammad.
Right.
People they, like you, they just did the work that was in front of them.
Yes.
And they loved it.
Yeah. And I was going to add something, but it just slipped my mind. Yes. Do what's in front of you. I have a sphere of responsibility where I can act where I can impact and where I have choice and I have influence. The big picture, I see my responsibility in that and for that, and me, you, my daughter, my grandson, and my avocation is where I'm effective or where I have influence. And,
Right.
and yeah.
But I would suggest that our faith in this higher power helps us recognize that that sphere of influence is probably bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's because I can't prove this and I don't need to, but just as there's a vibrational energy to the emotional body, there's a vibrational energy to the spiritual body. And that vibrational energy is universal. My emotional body is unique to my body. I can't bring my emotional energy to you and have you feel it. But there are subtler energies that we actually do all participate in by virtue of being human. And I believe that those are the qualities that allow me to let go and trust that the letting go will lead to the creation of the intentions that I set forth. I don't know how. We had a birthday meeting for my home adult children of alcoholics meeting this week. And I've been 5 years in the program. And so they asked all the birthday kids, including the 1-monthers, if there's anything we wanted to say. And I just said, I'm glad to have reached a point in my life where I don't have to be in charge of anything.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, it's none of my business.
Yeah, it's like God's got this. So that leaves me free to do, as I heard you say, that leaves me free to do that which is mine to do. And revel in it with my character defects and the mistakes I'm going to make and the childhood trauma that still presents itself in the same old pattern, the same old negative commentary, the same old self-violence. Only now it's like, it's okay. It's okay. I'm not fighting myself anymore. I'm allowing it to be, and I'm trusting that this higher power, God, whatever, has it all in hand. And I would not have gotten here without learning this from you and from somehow having the grace to go, I want to know what Donovan knows.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
I can tell you right now, absolutely nothing. The more I understand, the less I know.
That's why I don't have to be in control of anything.
There you go. Yeah. Very cool.
Yep. Well, we just have a couple minutes. Any last minute words for the good of the cause?
Well, I enjoy where we've been going, and I'm feeling excited about the ease with which this hour goes by, as compared to when I first started, when I was like trying to figure, say right, look right, my hair look, let's just shave it off. So I'm developing a skill set here, and I appreciate that.
So I just want to remind everybody that if you'd like to participate in an accountability practice meeting and learn about this through your own experience, at the end of the podcast, there's a list of how to get in touch with me, and I will be happy to give you the information on the meetings that we facilitate through Sacramento, or to get in touch with John to get the information on his new 8:30 Saturday morning meeting Pacific time. Everybody's welcome. That's an open meeting, right?
Yes.
So please feel free to contact either of us, and we'll be happy to send you an invite. Also, John is going to be doing a workshop on all of this stuff for us on March 19th, Saturday, March 19th at 11 o'clock Pacific time, 11 to 2 Pacific time. It's a bag lunch event. So again, if you'd like information on that, please let us know, and we'll be happy to invite you to join us. And if you've never experienced a workshop with John, I highly recommend you check it out. All the things that we talk about here are done in an interactive basis so that you can participate yourself, or you can observe other people participating and get a sense of how this accountability practice can work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things I want to comment on is my wounding came in the presence of people, and it speaks to what we've been talking about today, that the group non-judgment and being witnessed by other people without judgment. So necessarily my healing comes in the presence of people, and it's powerful, and I'm excited and humbled by all this.
Not a bad combination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, John, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
This wraps up February for us, so I look forward to the March edition next week.
Yeah, me too.